What's up guys, Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. So you're probably already aware of this, but there's like a million videos about modes on YouTube already. A lot of them are guitar related videos. Of those million videos, most of them are going to be theoretical type of videos. I'm guilty of this too. I love the theory behind modes. I love all about like, hey, Lydian has a sharp 4, Mixolydian has a flat 7. Awesome stuff, great. But there's not quite as many how to actually use modes videos. I have a few of them, but I definitely have a lot more of the theoretical type of videos. And if you look around YouTube, you're going to find a whole bunch of theory videos, but then a lot of people are left with, what do I do with this stuff? How do I actually use this mode information in my own playing? That's what today's video is going to be about. So before getting into the technicalities, which is the theory, which is the part that, tends to bore a lot of people, I'm just going to start this video off by giving you the absolute practical stuff that you can take and just use right away, all right? Number one, chords. That's what modes are all about. It's all about the chords. It's not about the scales. It's not about your lead guitar playing. You as a lead guitar player, you're not in charge of the mode. The rhythm section is in charge of the mode. That is the number one most important thing to understand. If the rhythm section says, hey, we're in Dorian, guess what? You're in Dorian. If the rhythm section says, hey, we're in Aeolian, you're in Aeolian. If the rhythm section says, hey, we're in Aeolian, and you as a lead guitar player decide, hey, I want to play Dorian. Okay, I'm not going to say you can't do that. If it sounds good to you, then do it, But you're not in Dorian, because the rhythm section has dictated that you're in Aeolian. You're just playing a different scale over top of what has already been set by the rhythm section. It's all about the chords. The chords are the driver of the bus. That is the number one most important thing to understand. Number two, characteristic chord combinations. What that is it's a 2-chord combination that lets you know specifically which mode the chord progression or the song that you're playing or the song that you're writing or whatever, which mode it's in. All right? You can look at a song and you just look for that 2-chord combination. Oh, that's a Dorian progression. This is what we're doing. Or you look at a song. The song is going to have more than 2 chords probably, but you look for the 2-chord characteristic chord combination. You're like, oh, that's Mixolydian. Got it. It's not Ionian because the characteristic chord combination has dictated to me that that is Mixolydian. The first thing to understand is that you have major modes and you have minor modes, and then you have Locrian, which is kind of like the black sheep of the family that's based off a diminished chord. We're going to get all into that as we get into the theory part of this video. But just understand, Ionian, Mixolydian, Lydian, those are your major modes. So the one of the 2 chords of the characteristic chord combination is going to be a major chord. Your 1 chord is going to be a major chord for Ionian progressions, Mixolydian progressions, and Lydian progressions. For Aeolian, Dorian, and Phrygian, those are going to be your minor modes. That means your 1 chord, or one of the 2 chords of this characteristic chord combination, the chord that's dictated as your tonal center, the home chord, is going to be a minor chord. All right? And then you have the black sheep, the Locrian, that's going to be based off a diminished chord, but we're going to get to that as I said. So the characteristic chord combination for Ionian is a 1 chord in combination with a 4 chord. Major 1, major 4 chord. So when you hear something like this, that's just the characteristic chord combination. Of course, there's going to be more chords in it than just that, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, okay, the C major chord, that's our home chord, that's our tonal center, that's the 1 chord. Look at all the rest of the chords. Oh, there's also an F chord in there. That's the 4 chord in relation to the C major chord. Okay, Ionian chord progression. Got it. This will also work. It doesn't matter what key you're in. Like, let's say you're in the key where A is your 1 chord. There's your 1. There's your 4. Look for that. That's your 2-chord characteristic chord combination for Ionian. 2-chord characteristic combination for Lydian is going to be a major 1 chord followed by another major chord that is a whole step above it, otherwise known as a major 1 and then a major 2 chord. So if the first chord is C, the second chord that is going to let you know that it's Lydian is going to be 1 whole step higher and also a major chord. It's going to be a D major. An example of this would be the song Jane Says by Jane's Addiction. That's a G major chord and an A major chord. That's 2 major chords separated by a whole step. You could also look at this as bar chords. G major chord is your 1, A major is your 2, your major 2. That's that characteristic chord combination for Lydian. So all right, next is Mixolydian. Mixolydian, you have your major 1 chord, and then your other chord that lets you know that it's a Mixolydian progression is going to be a whole step lower than it, and also a major chord. It's going to be known as your flat 7 chord. So a major 1 chord and then a major flat 7 chord in combination with one another is going to let you know it's a Mixolydian chord progression. So if C is your 1, one whole step lower than that would be the B flat chord. And keep in mind that which chord is the tonal center is often subjective. Also stuff we're going to talk about in this video. So a lot of people will say that Jane says, they're like, wait, why does that have to be G Lydian? Why can't it be A Mixolydian? You know, because it's kind of just like the reverse. Like here's if A is your 1 and then G is your flat 7. You know, so it's subjective. It is, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk all about the subjectivity of these modal chord progressions. But at some point, someone's just going to have to say, you know what? One of these chords is going to get the label of the 1, and then if you give one of the chords the label of the 1, then you look at the other chords in relation to that 1, and that's how you determine what type of modal chord progression it is. So if you're saying, hey, C is the 1, that's it. C is the 1 chord. That's a Mixolydian progression because we have determined that the C major chord is the 1 chord. So an example of a song that uses a Mixolydian chord progression is the song Fire on the Mountain by Grateful Dead. So that starts out with a B major chord. Now with no other context, you don't know. Is it Ionian? Is it Mixolydian? Is it Lydian? We don't know. We don't have any other context. You know, the first assumption would be like, oh, that must be B major. If you go on Google and you say, hey, what's the key of Fire on the Mountain? It may tell you that it's the key of B major. But then when you listen to the song, you hear that there's a B major chord. And then you have this A major chord, which is a whole step lower than it, which is a 1 flat 7 combo, both of which are major chords. So that lets you know it's not just regular B major or B Ionian, it's B Mixolydian. Alright, so now we're going to look at the minor modes. So minor modes, your 1 chord is now going to be a minor chord. So the first one we're going to look at is going to be Dorian. Let's just look at Dorian. When you have a minor 1 chord and a major 4 chord, that is the characteristic combination that lets you know that it's a Dorian progression. All right, so something like A minor here. All right, and then a major 4. An example of this would be Evil Ways by Carlos Santana that uses a G minor chord, that's the 1 chord, and then a C major, that's the 4 chord. Another example is Breathe by Pink Floyd that uses an E minor chord. So you have the minor 1, major 4. That lets you know that it's a Dorian chord progression. Aeolian chord progression. That is going to be a minor 1 chord and then a major flat 6 chord. All right. We're going to talk all about this numbering in this video. Don't get scared away right now. I promise I will get to this numbering and what all this flat 6 business means and stuff. Anyway, you've heard this before. So let's say our 1 chord is an A minor chord. This is what your flat 6 chord is going to sound like in relation to that. All right, you hear that all the time. The 1 flat 6 combo, because Aeolian chord progressions are super common. Of the minor chord progressions, that's going to be the one that you're going to hear the most often. Just like of the major chord progressions, the Ionian ones are going to be the ones that you hear the most often. So an example of this would be The Trooper by Iron Maiden. Like, you hear that. To just put this into like cowboy chords so you can hear what that E minor, C major sounds like together. That's what a 1 flat 6 combo sounds like. So when you hear those two chords together in a chord progression, it's an Aeolian chord progression. Then the last one for the minor modes is going to be Phrygian. That's when you're going to have a minor 1 chord and then a major flat 2 chord. That means you're going to have a minor 1 chord, and then a flat 2 chord is just going to be a half step higher, but played as a major. So this would be a Phrygian chord progression. An example of this would be London Calling by The Clash. That starts off with an E minor chord, and then it goes to an F major chord. Minor 1, major flat 2. Minor 1, major flat 2. And then it uses other chords too, but you're just looking for that 2 chord combination. It also goes... But if we're saying that the E minor chord of that chord progression, we're labeling that as the 1, that's our minor 1 chord. This is our little characteristic chord combination that says, hey, that's Phrygian. It's not just a regular E minor. It's not E Aeolian. That's a Phrygian progression. And then your Locrian is based off the diminished chord, but we're going to talk about that coming up in this video. So anyway, that's the practical stuff. All right, so now we're going to talk about the theory. So in order to understand modes fully and completely, you need to understand both the relative perspective and the parallel perspective. Both are equally as important as one another, and you can't understand modes completely until you understand both of these things. We're going to talk about both, and we're going to do that right now. First of all, we need to define what a key is, because this is a big thing, because it seems like everyone has a different definition of what a key is. I'm just going to stick with the same definition I've always used for what a key is, and that's going to apply to this video as well as every other video I've ever made. As far as I'm concerned, key signature, they mean one of the same thing. When you say key and key signature mean one of the same thing, that allows all of this mode theory that we're going to talk about here, this relative mode, this parallel mode, all of the stuff is going to make perfect sense once we have a definition of key that is exactly what I just said. So, what does relative modes mean? Relative modes just means that it's the same key. So C Ionian is the same key as D Dorian, which is the same key as E Phrygian, which is the same key as F Lydian, which is the same key as G Mixolydian, which is the same key as A Aeolian, which is the same key as B Locrian. That means if I was to play a chord progression that is in C Ionian, like this, here's the 1-4 combination. That would be the same exact key as if I were to play a D Dorian progression. So I can play a Dorian progression within this key, and that's perfectly fine. Let me just start on a D minor chord. I'm going to use bar chords just to kind of visually, so you can see what's going on. So here's my new 1 chord. I'm using the D minor chord. I'm saying this is my 1 chord. You could take this down to a cowboy chord land too, it doesn't matter. Alright, so I'm in the same key. I'm playing a Dorian progression within this key now. If I wanted to play a Phrygian progression within this key, no problem. I'm going to start on the E minor chord. And then I'm going to get that little characteristic chord combination. I'm going to have a major chord, major flat 2 chord. Alright, so... London Calling. So what if I wanted to play a Mixolydian chord progression within this key? No problem. I just take the G major chord of this key, because we've defined this key as the set of 7 chords, and that's our key, right? That's our definition for key, at least for this video and every other video that I've ever made. That's our definition for key. So we're taking the G major chord, we're saying, okay, that's home, that's going to be our 1 chord. All right, cool. We're still going to stay within this pool of stuff here, but we just need to get that characteristic chord combination in there to specify that this is in fact a Mixolydian chord progression. All right, so a 1 flat 7 combo. 1 flat 7 is 2 major chords separated by a whole step. Your first one and then your second one is a whole step lower than it, so... So that's a G Mixolydian progression played right within that key. So still sticking within the same key, let's now look at where all this numbering comes from. What's this flat 7 and this major 4 and all this crap? What is all that, you know? All right, so when you start out with the Ionian perspective, that's the default. That's just called a major key, right? Major key, Ionian mode, they're the same thing, all right? You have your chords from the key of C major. You have a scale formula for the major scale, or the Ionian scale. Major scale, Ionian scale, it's the same scale formula. That's the one scale of all the scales that are out there. That's the one that gets the scale formula, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every other scale has some sort of variation to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sharps, flats, whatever. The major scale, the Ionian scale, that's the one that gets the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You then number your chords accordingly. You have your 1 chord, your 2 chord, your 3 chord, your 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, and 7 chord. Major chords get the capital Roman numeral. Minor chords get the lowercase Roman numeral. And then the diminished chord gets the little circle sign. All right, there's other ways of numbering chords. This is just the reason that music theory is confusing, because there's always a bunch of different ways of doing things. But you can always guarantee that whenever you watch my videos, it's going to be consistent with what I've been doing 10 years ago, with what I've been doing 5 years ago, with what I've been doing 3 years ago. It's always consistent among all my videos, all right? So that's our 7 chords for the Ionian perspective. Let's say we wanted to look at these chords from the Dorian perspective. All you have to do is say, okay, I'm going to take the second chord, because Ionian's always 1, Dorian's always 2, Phrygian's 3, Lydian 4, Mixolydian 5, Aeolian 6, Locrian 7. I want to now rearrange the stuff so that I can make Dorian music within this key. All right. So take the second chord, the D minor chord. That's my new 1 chord now. Put that on the top, rearrange the rest of the chords accordingly. It's the same exact stuff as that of C major, as that of C Ionian. But now the D minor chord is my 1 chord. You have to number all of the rest of the chords accordingly. And you do so by looking at the Dorian scale formula. The Dorian scale formula is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. You number your chords accordingly. You have a 1 chord, you have a 2 chord, you have a flat 3 chord, you have a 4 chord, you have a 5 chord, you have a 6 chord, you have a flat 7 chord. The characteristic chord combination for Dorian is the 1 and the major 4. So if I take a D minor chord, and then I take that major 4 chord, which in this case is the G major chord. So why exactly is that the characteristic chord combination? Well, we have our 1 chord. This is the D minor chord. But is it Aeolian? Is it Dorian? Is it Phrygian? We don't know. We don't have any other context. But when you have this context, you're like, oh, okay, now I have this 2 chord combination. So what about that chord makes it Dorian? What makes it Dorian is this note right here. So if you're playing your D scale here, that's the note in that 4 chord, that major 4 chord that says, hey, this is Dorian. It contains that characteristic note of the D Dorian scale. All right, so let's say that we wanted to take this key now and rearrange it such that we're looking at it from the Phrygian perspective. So in that case, you're going to take the 3rd chord of the key of C major. That's our original key, our parent key, or starting key. Take your 3 chord, that's the 1 chord. That's the new 1 chord now, all right? Rearrange the rest of the chords accordingly. How do we number the chords? We number the chords according to the Phrygian scale formula. The Phrygian scale formula is 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. So we have a 1 chord, we have a flat 2 chord, a flat 3 chord, we have a 4 chord, a 5 chord, we have a flat 6 chord, and we have a flat 7 chord. That goes right along with the Phrygian scale formula. Major chords get the uppercase Roman numerals, minor chords get the lowercase Roman numerals, and then the 1 diminished chord of the key gets the little circle sign. So the characteristic chord combination for Phrygian, you have a minor 1 chord, and then a major flat 2 chord. So that's 1/2 step higher than it. And then the defining note of the Phrygian scale is the flat 2 note. So that flat 2 note is present right there in that characteristic chord combination. So if this is our 1, and then this is the chord that says, hey, this is Phrygian, there's that note. All right, so that's that characteristic note right there found in the flat 2 chord. All right, so now if you want to rearrange this for the Lydian perspective, you just take the chords from C major, you have your 7 chords, and just say the 4th of those chords is now going to be my 1 chord. All right? The 4th of the chords in the key of C major is the F major chord. Rearrange things, and now the F major chord is your 1 chord. Number the rest of the chords accordingly. Do so according to the Lydian scale formula, which is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you look at the numbering of all the chords, you see that you have a 1 chord, a 2 chord, a 3 chord, a sharp 4 chord, a 5 chord, a 6 chord, and a 7 chord. The characteristic chord combination for Lydian is going to be that 1 and then that major 2 chord together. So if you have an F major chord, you have a G major chord. So what's so special about that major 2 chord? Why is that what dictates Lydian? You know, if we have our major 1 chord, and then we have this major 2 chord in relation to the major 1 chord, why is that Lydian? You know, like I thought sharp 4 is what makes Lydian Lydian, you know? What's up with the sharp 4 thing? All right, so if we're saying we're in F Lydian now, so the F is our 1 chord, the F Lydian scale, that's our F Lydian scale. The thing that makes Lydian Lydian is the sharp 4 note, right? So if you look at this 2 chord combination, what makes it Lydian is this note. That's the note B. The note B is present in the 2 chord. All right, so when you have an F major chord and the G major chord together, that characteristic chord combination that says, hey, this is a Lydian progression, the reason is because that second chord, that major 2 chord, in relation to the 1 chord, has that characteristic Lydian note, that sharp 4 note, which in this case would be B. Does that make sense? That's the answer. Now we're going to look at Mixolydian. We have to now rearrange the chords of the key of C major such that the 5th chord is now the 1 chord. Doing that, you look at the chords of C major. G major is the 5th chord of the key of C major. Rearrange all your stuff. Now G major gets placed at the top. You number your chords according to the Mixolydian scale formula. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Major chords get uppercase Roman numerals. Minor chords get lowercase Roman numerals. The diminished chord gets the little circle sign after it. Your characteristic chord combination is going to be, if this is our 1 now, this is our 1 chord, G major chord within this key. This is our flat 7 chord. The characteristic note that makes Mixolydian Mixolydian is that flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 is the scale formula for Mixolydian. And that flat 7 note is present right in the root note of this characteristic chord. Are we in G major? Are we in G Ionian? Are we in G Mixolydian? Are we in G Lydian? I don't know. If this is 1... oh, that chord's there? Got it. Mixolydian is the answer. So now we're going to look at the 6th perspective of this key, which is the Aeolian mode perspective. So the Aeolian mode perspective is commonly referred to as just a minor key. This is a very big argument on the internet, I guess you could say. People trying to figure out specifically what the difference between a minor key and the Aeolian mode are. There's all kinds of different subjective opinions and this and that, and it really all comes down to how a person defines key. So if we have defined key as we did in this video here, which is the same way that I've always defined key in every single other video I've ever made, where key and key signature mean one and the same thing, then the Aeolian mode is very simple to understand. It's just one of the 7 possible perspectives of a key. There are 12 possible keys, each of which has 7 possible perspectives. So if we look at the key of C major, and then we take our 6th chord, which happens to be the A minor chord, and we say, okay, that's going to be our 1 chord, and we're going to rearrange the rest of the chords accordingly. Now we're looking at this key in the Aeolian perspective. You start with your A minor chord, that's your 1 chord. You number the rest of the chords accordingly. How do you do that? You look at the Aeolian scale formula. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. That's how you get the numbering for your chords. Major chords get uppercase Roman numerals. Minor chords get lowercase Roman numerals. The diminished chord of the key gets a little circle sign. That's how you get your chords for the Aeolian mode perspective. Of the 7 modes of the major scale, the Aeolian mode is the most common of the minor modes. Most of the songs that you hear are going to be Aeolian, or most of the minor songs you hear are going to be Aeolian based. Most of the major songs that you hear are going to be Ionian based. Those are the 2 most common. But that's not to say that you still can't write music in Mixolydian or in Lydian, or you still can write music in Dorian and Phrygian and whatnot, you know? Just because Ionian and Aeolian are so common that Ionian gets referred to as a major key and Aeolian gets referred to as a minor key, that doesn't mean that these other perspectives, you still can't write music in them. You absolutely can. And then, of course, the characteristic chord combination for Aeolian is a minor 1 chord in conjunction with a flat major 6 chord. So with this key that we're working in, if A minor is our 1 chord, our flat major 6 chord would be the F chord. Alright, so anytime you hear this, you even hear that in Stairway to Heaven. That lets you know, oh, there's this chord, there's the 1 chord, there's some other stuff going on, but this chord's also present. There's that flat major 6 chord. That characteristic chord combination together says, okay, that's an Aeolian progression. It's not a Dorian progression, it's not a Phrygian progression, it's an Aeolian progression because of that characteristic chord combination. And then your 7th one, your 7th perspective of a key would be the Locrian perspective. That's where you would take all your chords of the key that you're working in. We're still in the key of C major here. So the 7th of those chords would be that B diminished chord. You rearrange all your stuff such that B diminished is at the top. That's your new 1. You number all the chords accordingly based on the Locrian scale formula. The Locrian scale formula is 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. Major chords get uppercase Roman numerals, minor chords get lowercase Roman numerals. Then the 1 diminished chord of the key gets the little circle sign. So now our 1 chord in this particular perspective is the one that gets the little circle sign because that's the diminished chord. That's our home chord now. The rest of the chords get numbered accordingly, according to the Locrian scale formula. And then you can go ahead and you can write Locrian music. You got to make this your home now. All right, so actually, I did my song where I played in all 7 parallel modes, and the last of those 7 parallel modes was Locrian. So I'll be referencing to that song throughout this video, just so you can kind of hear what a Locrian perspective might sound like. But I just wanted to get through the whole relative mode concept first. All right, so everything that we've looked at right there, all of the perspectives of a key signature, and then the renumbering of everything, renumbering for Mixolydian, renumbering for Lydian, renumbering for Phrygian, you know, all of that stuff is all based on the scale formula, but the fact that we stayed within 1 key, we used all of the same original 7 notes and the original 7 chords. We have this little pool of stuff to use. That's what we're defining as key. A mode is just a perspective of a key. There's 7 different perspectives of the key. That is relative modes. Let's now talk about parallel modes. All right, so parallel modes are where things get interesting. This is how you really throw some interesting key changes into your songs and stuff like that. This is just, I don't know, in my opinion, this is just where the beauty of modes comes in, the understanding of parallel modes. But you need to understand all the relative stuff first, because if we didn't just spend all that time talking about all the relative mode stuff, then this parallel mode stuff might not make sense to you. So I recently wrote this original song. It's called Moods, and in that song I play in all 7 parallel modes of C. All right, so I start out in C Lydian, and then I move to C Ionian, then I move to C Mixolydian, then C Dorian, then all the C rooted modes. Those are parallel modes. And when you're doing that, you're actually changing keys, at least according to the definition of key that we have declared in this video. A key being a pool of stuff. 7 specific notes, 7 specific chords. That's what a key is. Key signature, it means one and the same thing. That's the definition that we're going with for here in this video. So if you're looking at parallel modes, if you're looking at C Ionian versus C Lydian, that's 2 different keys you're comparing. If you're looking at C Ionian versus C Mixolydian, that's 2 different keys that you are comparing. All right, because relative modes would be C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, and so on. Parallel modes, C Ionian, C Dorian, C Lydian, C Phrygian, C Mixolydian. So here in this chart I have all 7 parallel modes of the major scale written down, and then the parent major key from which they come from. Remember the parent major key thing? Like when we were talking about the relative modes previously, when I was talking about the D Dorian mode, that comes from the parent major key of C major. Everything that we previously looked at was all just in one single key that's been rearranged. So when we were talking about E Phrygian, the parent major key was C major. When we were talking about G Mixolydian, the parent major key was C major. The parent major key was exactly the same for all of the examples that we talked about previously. So when you're looking at these 7 parallel modes of the major scale here, it shows not only the mode in question, but then the parent major key from which it comes from. And I'm going to explain to you how to determine what the parent major key is coming up in a second. But so C Ionian, the parent major key for C Ionian, C major. That's easy. Then you have C Dorian. What's the parent major key for C Dorian? That would be the key of B flat major. And then you have C Phrygian. The parent major key from which that comes from is the key of A flat major. And then you have C Lydian. The parent major key from which that comes from is the key of G major. And then you have C Mixolydian, which comes from the parent major key of F major. And then you have C Aeolian, which comes from the parent major key of E flat major. And then you have C Locrian, which comes from the parent major key of D flat major. So the way that you can figure this stuff out is you can always just reverse engineer your way back to the parent major key. And the way that you do this is you just remember the order of modes. I'm sure you've heard the order of modes before. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you are in C Mixolydian, for example, and you're trying to figure out what the parent major key of C Mixolydian is, or where that comes from, all you have to do is know that Mixolydian is 5. And then you ask yourself, okay, C Mixolydian. C is the fifth of what? The of what gives you your answer. So if you can determine that C is the fifth of F, and you know that, then you're like, okay, C Mixolydian, F major is the parent major key. Got it. If you're looking at C Dorian, and you want to know what the parent major key is that C Dorian comes from, Dorian is 2. Ask yourself, C is the second of what? C is the second of B flat. It's the second note of the B flat major scale. And you can also use your fretboard to help you out with this by using the movable major scale pattern. Just the simple major scale pattern right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I have C Phrygian and I'm trying to work my way back to what the parent major key is. So I know it's C. I know it's Phrygian, so that's 3. Alright, so C is going to be the third note of some major scale. What major scale is that? Once I know that answer, then I know what the parent major key is. So if C is 3, there's the note C. Here's my little pattern. Oh, there's the parent major key note. So A flat. But I'm starting on this note because this is my tonal center for Phrygian. Alright, so now let's say that I wanted to play some modal chord progressions where C was my tonic, or C was my home chord, C major chord, or C minor chord, or even a C diminished chord if we're looking at the Locrian perspective. Alright, so these are parallel modes now. We're not comparing C Ionian to D Dorian to E Phrygian to F Lydian anymore. That would be relative mode comparison. This is now parallel mode comparison. We're comparing C Ionian to C Dorian to C Lydian to C. Alright, so everything is C. We could still take the same stuff that we already know about this characteristic chord combination stuff, and we can make modal chord progressions. So let's say I want to play C Lydian. I want to play C Lydian progression. Let's do that. What's the characteristic chord combination for Lydian? You have a major 1 chord followed by another chord that is a major chord that is a whole step higher than it, a 1 major 2 combo. All right, so if I wanted to play a Lydian progression, this would be my 1, and then this is my 2. You see that characteristic chord combination, major 1, major 2. Cool, it's Lydian. It's not Ionian, it's not Mixolydian, it's Lydian. The characteristic chord combination told us that. So now let's say that you want to solo over top of that. What scale do you use? You use your C Lydian scale because you're in C Lydian, right? But let's say that you don't know your C Lydian scale. You're like, I don't know that C Lydian scale. What are you talking about? You actually do, right? Because the C Lydian scale is the same scale notes as the parent major scale from which the C Lydian mode comes from. You can already work your way back to the parent major, right? So we're in C Lydian here. C. Lydian. Lydian is 4. So C is the 4th of what major scale? You can take your little movable scale pattern that we talked about, move it around such that the note C becomes the 4th note. Oh, there it is. So right there, if I take that little major scale pattern, there's the C, that's the 4th note. That means my parent major scale is G. So my parent major scale is the G major scale. So I'm playing in C Lydian, I have my C Lydian chord progression. And I want to solo over top of that. I'm going to use the C Lydian scale. If I don't know what the C Lydian scale is, fine, G major scale, whatever. It's the same scale, it's the same 7 notes. G major scale, C Lydian scale, map it out over the fretboard. It's the same 7 notes, right? So if you want to think of it as the G major scale, knock yourself out. If you want to think of it as the C Lydian scale, knock yourself out. Chord tone targeting still applies. All the best sounding notes in the scale over the C major chord are going to be the C major notes, C, E, and G. All of the best sounding notes over the D major chord are going to be the D major chord tones, D, F sharp, and A. Chord tone targeting still applies. It doesn't matter which scale you're using. The chords are the chords. You're playing over a C major chord, so C, E, and G are going to sound good over that chord. You're playing over a D major chord, so D, F sharp, and A are going to sound good over that chord. You're soloing over the whole thing using the G major scale or the C Lydian scale, whatever you want to call it. Here's a little demo of that. After the C Lydian section of that song, it then moved to C Ionian, which is a different key. We changed keys at that point. C Ionian has a major 1 chord and then a major 4 chord. That's the characteristic chord combination to look for. So if this is our 1 chord, our major 4 would be, so a C and an F in combination with one another, or C and an F, a C and an F in combination with one another, say, hey, that's Ionian right there. And then I want to solo over that C Ionian chord progression. What's my parent major scale? It's easy with Ionian. Ionian major, done. All right, so C major is my parent major scale for C Ionian progression. So I don't have to reverse engineer anything with that one. Done deal. Here's what that sounds like. So then it moved on to C Mixolydian, which is yet another key. First we were in C Lydian, then we shifted to a new key for C Ionian, then we shifted to yet a new key for C Mixolydian. So this is the third key now. All right, so this is the 1 chord. How do we make that Mixolydian as opposed to Ionian or Lydian? How do we make it Mixolydian? You put a major chord in that's a whole step lower than it. So that's the 1 flat 7 combination where both chords are major chords. And then you solo over top of that using the C Mixolydian scale. If you don't know what the C Mixolydian scale is, you can always think in terms of parent major. All right, so what's the parent major scale for C Mixolydian? I just have to move this stuff around, move my little major scale pattern around such that the note C is 5. Here we go, there's C. Okay. So F major is my parent major scale for C Mixolydian because C is the 5th note of the F major scale. Mixolydian is 5. C is my point, my tonal center, my tonic note. Working our way back, we come up with F major. Got it? So if I want to solo over top of this C Mixolydian progression, I can use the C Mixolydian scale. But if I don't know what the C Mixolydian scale is, I can always be like, oh, but I do know what the F major scale is. I know how to do that already, so I'm going to think that way. Perfectly fine. This is what it sounds like. The song then moves to C Dorian, which is now the 4th key of this song. All right, so this is yet another key change. So C Dorian. This is now based off of a minor chord. So the C minor chord is going to be our 1. Is it C Aeolian? Is it C Phrygian? Is it C Dorian? I don't know. We need another chord in there. You need the characteristic chord. So C minor. Let's just play the C minor here. Minor 1. Major 4. Evil Ways. So that's the characteristic chord combo. And then if I want to solo over top of that, what do? I use the C Dorian scale because I'm in C Dorian. What if I don't know C Dorian? What if I have to reference back to the parent major? No problem. C. Dorian. Dorian is 2. Dorian is always 2. That means C is the second note of a major scale. What major scale is C the second note of? Let's take my movable scale pattern. Oh, here's a C right here. Okay, so that means this is my parent major key. So C Dorian comes from the parent major key of B flat major. So if I want to think I'm in the key of B flat major and solo that way, cool. If I want to think I'm in the key of C Dorian, whatever. It's the same scale. It's the same scalar framework. That's the key. You're using the key of B flat major. That's the B flat major scale is your soloing framework. What to do on a per chord basis? Chord tone target. Always. Chord tone targeting is independent of the scale. That's why chord tone targeting is layer 2. It's something that you study independently. You learn how to chord tone target via the cage system and whatnot. That's something that you do on its own. And then all the scale stuff, that's your layer 1 stuff. You learn that stuff independently. So it doesn't matter that I'm playing in the Dorian mode or the Lydian mode or the Mixolydian mode. I'm still playing over basic major and minor chords, therefore chord tone targeting always applies. That's the Dorian perspective. Here's a quick example of what that sounds like. It then moved on to the C Aeolian mode. This is now the 5th key change that took place in this song. C minor was the first chord. We needed the characteristic chord that let us know that it was Aeolian as opposed to Dorian or Phrygian, and that is a flat major 6 chord, so... Alright, so that was the chord that was used. The same process works the same way. You can think back to the parent major key. Okay, so Aeolian is 6. C is the 6th note of what major scale? Move your stuff around. Here's the notes. We'll use this C up here. All right, so we're going to use this major scale pattern. There's the C. That's the 6th note of the scale pattern. This is the first note. That's the note E flat. So that lets us know that the parent major key of this mode is E flat major. Solo over top of this whole entire thing using the C Aeolian scale, otherwise known as the C natural minor scale. A lot of people just call this the C minor scale, whatever. C minor scale. Or think of it from its relative major. You know, you can say, okay, I'm using the E flat major scale, whatever. It's just 7 notes. Those 7 notes mapped out across the fretboard are what they are. Your chord tone targeting over the C minor chord is going to be the notes of the C minor chord. Your chord tone targeting over the A flat major chord is going to be the notes of the A flat major chord. Chord tone targeting always applies. This is what it sounds like. Is Phrygian, C Phrygian. This is now the 6th key change that took place in this song. Alright, so C minor chord is going to be a 1 chord. In order for it to be Phrygian, you need that characteristic chord combination, which is the flat major 2 chord, 1 half step higher, played in major form. So this is the 1 chord. This is the characteristic chord. Alright, so you got that going on. And then you want to solo over top of this. The way that you do that is you use the C Phrygian scale, all up and down the entire neck of the guitar. What is the C Phrygian scale? You can reference back to its parent major key. C is the 3rd note, because Phrygian is 3, right? C is the 3rd note of what major scale? Take your little movable scale pattern. Ah, here we go. There's a C right there. That's the 3rd note. There's the first note of that little movable scale pattern. That's the note A flat. That tells me that C Phrygian comes from the parent major key of A flat major. So if I want to think A flat major, noodle, 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 fine. If I want to think C Phrygian, noodle, 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 that's fine. However you want to think of it, you've got your 7 notes. It's the key signature. Key signature, they mean one and the same thing. Everything's easy when you think that way, just my opinion. Here's how that sounds. Here's the Phrygian stuff. We have C Locrian. C Locrian is going to be based off a C diminished chord. If you're looking at it in triad form, it's just a diminished triad. If you're looking at it in 7th form, it's going to be a half diminished chord, because in any of the 12 keys, that 7th chord, that diminished chord, is always a half diminished type of chord. So we have a C half diminished type of chord. All right, so right here, that's home. It's not always easy to make a diminished chord to feel like home, to feel like your tonal center, but it's been done before, and I did it in my song. It's a subjective thing. Some people may hear it and be like, you know what, that doesn't sound like home to me. You know, that doesn't sound like a tonal center. And I can't argue with them, because it's a subjective thing. You know, when you have a chord progression going on, the chord that, you know, one person says, that's the tonal center, another person may disagree. Another person may be like, you know what, I think that other chord is the tonal center. And then some other person may be like, you know what, I think that other chord is the tonal center. All 3 of them could potentially be right, because it's subjective. What's not subjective is key signatures, though. Key signatures is objective. That says, hey, these are our 7 notes, these are our 7 chords, and we arrange our stuff in this objective manner to get these other modes of this objective information that we're given. So key signature, perspective of the key signature is objective information. Which chord is the tonal center is subjective information. All right, so if you can make it sound like this is home and get other people to agree with you on the fact that that is home, then you've successfully written in C Locrian, right? So again, when it comes to soloing over something in C Locrian, you just use the C Locrian scale. If you don't know the C Locrian scale, you have to reference back to the parent major key. Locrian is 7. So you take this C up here, and then you can apply this scale. So that's the 7th note. That C is acting as the 7th note. So it's telling you that C Locrian comes from D flat major. Instead of moving that movable scale pattern around, you could also just be like, oh, if I'm in Locrian, 1/2 step higher is the parent major key. So C Locrian, oh, parent major key is just 1/2 step higher, D flat major. If I'm in E Locrian, 1/2 step higher is F major. You know, it's always just 1/2 step higher. And then you go ahead and solo over top of it, you know, solo over top of your C Locrian progression using the C Locrian scale or the D flat major scale, whatever you want to call it. It's the same 7 notes. It's just a rearrangement of the key signature of D flat major. There's 12 key signatures. Each of the 7 modes is just a rearrangement of the 12 key signatures. And that's that. So here's what the Locrian stuff sounds like. Then ended the song by remaining in that last key that we're in, since there were 7 key changes that took place in total throughout this song. So the very last of the keys that I was in, which was C Locrian, which has the parent key of D flat major, which then has the relative minor of B flat minor, which could also be said that the Aeolian perspective of that key would be B flat Aeolian. All right, so there's a bunch of different ways that we can define these things and label these things and use this different terminology and whatnot. But anyway, so in this song, I went C Lydian all the way to C Locrian, And then once I was in C Locrian, I was like, I'm going to stay in that key. I'm going to stay in that 7th key, and I'm just going to finish out this song in the Aeolian perspective of that final key. And that's what this sounds like here. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. We've talked about relative modes, we talked about parallel modes, and we've talked about the characteristic chord combinations that let you identify what mode a particular song or chord progression is in. In my opinion, this is the most practical use of modes for the average Joe guitar player. When I say the average Joe guitar player, I'm talking about guys like me. I'm talking about most of the people that watch my videos. I'm not talking about advanced jazz players, because advanced jazz players that are soloing over, improvising over pieces of music that have like a million different chords in it and stuff like that, they're thinking about modes different than we are. They're thinking about modes as just purely scales. Like, okay, over that chord I play this scale, over that chord I play this scale, over that chord I play this scale. One scale per chord, and there's 50 different chords in their chord sheet that they're improvising over. Therefore, they're playing 50 different scales. That is a different way of thinking about modes. It's still the same theory. The same theory still applies, but it's just a different usage of this concept. What I talked about here today will apply to most average Joe guitar players, because now you can go and you can listen to a song and you may think it's in G major originally because it starts on the G chord and it ends on the G chord, and you're listening to that and you're like, it's G major, but something's up with that. It's not quite G major. Like, why? What's different about it? Oh, it's got that F chord in there. Okay, it's not regular G major, it's not G Ionian, it's G Mixolydian. The characteristic chord combination told me everything I needed to know. Now I want to solo over top of that. Cool, I just used the G Mixolydian scale instead of the G major scale. No problem. Oh wait, what's the G Mixolydian scale? Mixolydian is 5. G is the 5th note of what major scale? Alright, cool. I can reverse engineer my way back to it. So this is practical use of modes. Alright? If I left anything out, just ask me. I'll make more videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Oh, check out my website, zombieguitar.com. No one made it to the end of this video anyway because this is like super long, but hey, there's my advertisement. Take it easy. Thank you.